صل على محمد وآل محمد
وأوازب الصلوات
صلى على محمد وآل بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المذلومين المنتخبين المنتجبين الذين كلامهم نور وأمرهم رشد ووصيتهم التقوى وفعلهم الخير وعادتهم الإحسان وسجيتهم الكرم لا سيما على الحسين المذلوم المقتول المجروح العطشان المذبوح من القفا في يوم عاشوراء في أرض كربلاء بلا جرم ولا خطأ الذي غسله دم وكفنه رمال كربلاء مقطع الأعضاء مسلوب العمامة والرداء يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم من كان يريد العزة فلله العزة جميعا صدق الله العلي العظيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Fatir, in the verse that I have recited, says, مَنْ كَانَ يُرِيدُ الْعِزَّةِ فَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةُ جَمِيعًا. Whoever desires to have honor, then belonging to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is honor and integrity in its completion. All of honor and dignity belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In analyzing this verse of the Holy Quran, I wish to look at the concept of izzah and honor and see what different types of honor exist, what the verse in question was telling us about honor, and how this concept of izzah in Quranul Kareem and this verse in particular links in with the personality of Abu Abdullah al-Hussain salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. And in doing so, a number of questions arise about this verse and the concept of honor in general. The first question that I have is when Quranul Kareem says, "Man kana yuridul izzah," whoever requires izzah and honor, what is meant by izzah? And what is the difference between izzah and other terms in the Arabic language that are similar to it? When you look at the Arabic lexicology of the word izzah, we're told that the word literally refers to a piece of land that is very hard, and a piece of land that no matter what you place on top of it, No matter if a building is built and placed on this piece of land, a heavy weight is placed on this land, no matter whether it is raining or whether the weather is hot, whatever is placed on this piece of land, the land doesn't break, the land doesn't crack, the land doesn't soften and move. This type of land or earth in Arabic was called izzah, from which we had the word honor, or the person who has dignity and integrity. Why? Because we were told that the original meaning of honor is when someone has so much power, like this land which is hard, nothing can be placed upon it, it will never break. Likewise, a person who had honor initially was someone who was always strong in front of a dhalim and an oppressor. No matter what type of oppressor was in front of them, they would never back down. And the way that this piece of earth never cracks, a person who had izzah would never be humiliated in front of a dhalim. We got the word aziz, or we got the word izzah. However, we have another term in Arabic that is similar to this one. And when you translate it, they are very similar in English. And that is the term sharaf. You may have heard, for example, this person is sharif. How would you translate this? This person is honorable. But there's a difference between izzah and sharaf. For we were told that honor which comes from your lineage and from your family, that is called sharaf. When a person has noble lineage, his family are known to be people, mathalan, that are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can call that person sharif. Whereas izzah referred to all types of honor, not just the honor that comes from a person's lineage or from a person's family, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of his names is that he is Aziz, but we will never call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Sharif. Why? Allah has no family. And so generally speaking, honor referred to a strength that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to a person, such that they are not humiliated in front of others. They have that quwwah. If this first question has been understood, the second question is, when we want to discuss today izzah and the honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, which type of honor is this? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلِلَّهِ الْإِزَّةُ جَمِيعًا, belonging to Allah Azza wa Jal is all types of izzah, this is referring to a specific category of izzah and honor that we need to understand. And I wish to explain this to you, this category of izzah that is my discussion, from an example. Take the example that a person gets into the best university in the United Kingdom. Just the fact that he or she has been accepted in that university. They haven't taken any exams yet. They haven't studied anything. They haven't attended any classes. Just the fact that this person was accepted to be in that university, this is honorable for him. This is a type of honor and dignity that I have, that I was accepted there. Then something else happened to this person. Not only were they accepted in this university, this person got to attend the lessons and the classes of the best teacher, the best professor. Again, no matter whether they pass or fail, they did well at the end of the degree or not, this in itself is an honor. That I went to that university and what? And I attended that person's lectures. Then there's a third type of honor that you got. Not only did you attend, not only did you go to his lessons, I also passed first in my class. This third type of honor is different to the first two. The first two give that person honor even if he failed at the end of the degree. Why? Because I went to that institution. I sat in that person's lessons. But the third type of izzah that the person was given is solely due to their actions. Let me give you another example. We have tournaments, football tournaments, tennis. The fact that I was able to play in that tournament, just participate, no matter what I did at the end, this is izzah for me. Then one stage higher, also I reached the final. This in itself is izzah and honor. Then if I won that tournament, this izzah that comes here is different to the first two. So once this has been understood, that some type of honor comes no matter what I do, no matter what my actions are. and some type of izzah and honor is solely based on a person's actions, now we can understand what our discussion is. Why? Because we also have three types of izzah in our life. One is the izzah that you get for being a human being. No matter what your actions are, no matter whether you are a believer or a disbeliever, the mu'min has a type, the human being has a type of izzah, such that if a human being comes to me asking for water, and they say that if I don't quench my thirst right now, I will die, I don't look at that person's actions. I see that he's a human being that Allah has given izzah, I quench his thirst. So this is one type of honor. The second type of honor, again, that has nothing to do with your actions, is the izzah and the honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to a mu'min. The mu'min in and of themselves has a type of izzah, whether they are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. If they are a mu'min, they have izzah. Let me give you an example. A person says, I was sitting with Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, and there were a group of people present. The Holy Imam looked at them, addressed them and said, why do you not adhere to our right? You take us lightly. So if a ma'soom came and said to you, you take me lightly, you don't adhere to my right, what would be your reaction? Ya ibn Rasulullah, I love you. Ya ibn Rasulullah, never. So when he said to this group of people that you don't adhere to our right, you take us lightly, someone says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, Ya Aba Abdullah, no, of course not. How can we take you lightly? How can we not adhere to your haqq over us? The Imam said, just now we were in Hajj, weren't we? He says, yes, Ya ibn Rasulullah. When we were walking in Hajj, one of the believers, the izzah of the mu'min in and of himself or herself, one of the believers was tired. And he asked you, do you mind to help me for a bit? Carry me for a bit. Allow me to lean on you for part of this journey. What did you do? So the person didn't say anything. The Imam said, when he requested something from you, you didn't even raise your head. You didn't even bother to acknowledge what he said. When you didn't adhere to the right of a mu'min, it's as if you didn't adhere to my right. This type of izzah and honor that the mu'min has is without looking at their actions. This is also not our discussion. For we're told, a mu'min, if they ask you to get for something, you should respond. This is part of his or her izzah. The third type, however, which is our discussion, is the izzah that comes based on action, which is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the verse. When he says, فَلِلَّهِ الْإِزَّةُ جَمِيعًا, he's talking about the honor that a person gains when they are completely obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is what is being referred to. The honor that you gain whilst doing ita'ah and doing submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If this second question has been understood, the third discussion then comes. What importance did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala place to this izzah? The honor that you gain from doing ita'ah and being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What was the importance of this? What was this in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We're told that a person comes to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I have these problems. So as soon as he saw the Imam, he began telling him, I have this issue and that difficulty. And finances are difficult for me, and I can't, for example, feed my children, and so on and so forth. Without any introduction, without anything. He saw the Imam straight away. So when this person is having this discussion with the Holy Imam, straight away the Imam told someone in his house, whatever money we have in the house, bring for me. So they bought a certain amount of money, and the Imam gives it to that person. That person says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, when I told you these things, my intention wasn't that I wish for money. Sometimes a person comes to the Imam, he wants money, he doesn't have anything. This person says, no, this wasn't my intention. The reason I came and told you these things is because I want you to pray for me. So the Imam says, when did I say your intention was this? I never said your intention was to ask me. I heard of your need and I gave that which inshallah will fulfill it. So I know that your intention wasn't this, but the Imam tells him something. He says, look, I am the Imam of your time. It makes sense. You want to tell the Imam your difficulty. This is something we have. You want to tell him of your problems, but don't go around telling every single person you meet about all of the difficulties you face. You came to me in this way and straight away you told me a list. My wife gives me problems, my children give me problems, I have financial difficulty, I can't sleep at night. He mentioned everything. Yes, I'm your Imam, you told me. But don't tell others of all of the problems that you have. Why? Because if you do so, your honor is affected in front of their eyes. If I go and tell someone about everything that I'm being affected with, they won't look at me in the same way. My third question was what? What is the importance in the eyes of Allah of the izzah that I gain from being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This answers my question. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't happy for a mu'min or mu'minah with their own will and out of their own desire to do something which leads to their humiliation. How would he accept someone else humiliating that mu'min? You yourself, it's your own izzah, it's your own honor. You're told you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to tell someone of the sins that you commit so that your izzah and honor is affected. In fact, we have a concept also in jurisprudence called libas al-shuhra. Libas al-shuhra is any item of clothing. If I were to wear it, people would laugh at me. So today you have seen me with a turban and aba on my shoulders. Tomorrow I came in the uniform of an army soldier. In and of itself, is it haram? No. But because you saw him entering into the masjid, yesterday he wore one thing, today he's wearing this, you would laugh at that person. According to Sharia, I'm not allowed to wear it. Why? Because I'm not allowed to do something that will lead to my humiliation. And so the importance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to izzah was this, that even when it refers to yourself, you don't have any control over it. You don't have any control of doing something that leads to your humiliation in front of other people. If these three questions have been understood, the fourth question that arises about this verse, and that which is the most important of our discussion, is that this is an honor that I get for doing obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is in opposition to it? And what other types of izzah exist? For Quranul Kareem speaks about this izzah, this honor. It also speaks about something else. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes, for example, I've been to a certain community. I've never been there before, I entered it. And you see certain people are very respected. They have honor in that society or in that community. So when you go to ask why is it that this person is honorable in this society? What's the reason behind this? They'd come and say to you, because his business is very big. Because this person has a lot of wealth. This is one type of izzah which Quranul Kareem speaks about. But it's not the type of izzah that Allah is referring to. Sometimes a person has izzah. Why? Due to the place that they were born or the place that they lived. I'm from this place, therefore I have a type of dignity and honor. Sometimes I am given izzah by people due to the way that I look, due to who my father was. All of this izzah and honor is on one side. This isn't what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to. For we were told there are two types of izzah. One which comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which I said comes due to ita'ah and obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and one type of honor that comes from everything else. Any type of honor that came from other than obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on one side. And Quranul Kareem speaks about this. Quranul Kareem says, you think that this is true honor, this is a delusion of honor in your eyes. You gave a person izzah because of their wealth, because of their status in front of others. because of the way that they look or the place that they live. This isn't true honor. This is a delusion of honor. And Quran gives us an example. قَالُوا بِإِزَّةِ فِرْعَوْنَ. When the magicians are standing in front of Musa, they want to do a dua that hopefully we succeed. So what do they say? They say, with the izzah and honor of Fir'aun, إِنَّا لَنَحْنُ الْغَالِبُونَ. We'll beat Musa in this contest. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed them what the true izzah of Fir'aun was. That he drowned in front of every single other person of his community. This is a izzah which is wahmi, which is delusional, which doesn't exist. True izzah comes from someone being close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so in that same community that I entered, and I saw this person has izzah because of his wealth, I saw someone else who has izzah and honor in front of the people because he's very trustworthy. Or because he's known to be a person that awakes in the middle of the night time in prayer of his Lord. This is the type of izzah that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If these two types have been understood, the issue then that comes is, what are the differences between these two? The izzah that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the izzah that comes from people. What is the difference between these two? The first difference that we have is the izzah that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall always remain. A person dies, 300 years later his name is still honorable. The izzah that comes from other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, due to these worldly things, will go very quickly. Izzah of Allah remains even after a person's death. And one of the examples of this, one of the scholars of Ahlul Sunnah was asked on one occasion. He said, tell us some of the virtues of Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Tell us some of the fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the virtues. You're a scholar in history, you know these things, tell us. So what is that person's response? He says, look, when it comes to Ali ibn Abi Talib, he has followers and he has enemies. His followers were unable to mention his virtues. Why? Because they're fearful of their own life. They have to do taqiyya. So they hid the virtues of Amir al-Mu'mineen because they're fearful. His enemies hid his virtues out of hatred for Ali ibn Abi Talib. In fact, not only did they do that, they made up funny stories about Ali ibn Abi Talib to humiliate him. He says, when his followers hid his virtues out of fear of their life, and his enemies hid his virtues out of hatred, what can I say about that person? Both of them hid his virtues, yet I find the books of history filled with the virtues of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Why? Because this is izzah that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No matter how much someone tries, this is honor that lasts, no matter who tries to remove that honor. And so this is the first quality and first difference between these type of izzah. This izzah remains. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes for it to stay, it shall stay, and that person remains honorable. The second difference is that the izzah and honor given by the people of the world is something that you need to run after. But the izzah that comes from Allah runs after you and finds you at your doorstep. How many times have you seen people? They wish to be honorable in society. He'll buy a car or they'll buy a car so that I can be honorable, so that I can be dignified in front of people. They run behind this izzah which Allah says is a delusion. Whereas the true honor that Allah gives a mu'min or a mu'minah, due to their sincerity and their actions, is something that you don't need to search for. You don't need to even think about it. The promise of Allah is that it belongs to Him, He'll give it to you. And there's a very interesting example that I have read explaining this izzah that follows a person who worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is obedient to Him. We had a scholar that lived in the city of Mashhad by the name of Ayatollah Sheikh Ali al-Falsafi. Ayatollah Sheikh Ali al-Falsafi was a student of Sayyid Khou'i, Ayatollah al-Azma Khou'i. He mentions this. He says that I heard from Ayatollah Khou'i. Ayatollah Khou'i, now we have many names. If I go to mention a bit about each of these people, it will become very lengthy. But each of these people are great scholars. Ayatollah Khoi has a teacher who used to live in Najaf al-Ashraf by the name of Muhaqqiq Isfahani. Muhammad Hussain al-Isfahani, who has a book, Nihayat al-Diraya. He's a very well-known scholar. So he was the teacher of Ayatollah al-Udhma Khoi and many others. Allama Taba'i studied under him. Ayatollah Hadi Milani studied under him. Sheikh Bahjat, Ayatollah Bahjat studied under him. Many. Sayyid Khoi said, I heard from my teacher because the story is to do with him. So Sheikh Falsafi has said that he heard from his teacher, Sayyid Khoi. Sayyid Khoi has heard from this Muhaqqiq Isfahani, who's in Najaf. Muhaqqiq Isfahani says that during the first few years that I was studying in the Hawza, I had a certain friend of mine, we would go to classes together. Now, Hawza is not like a university. Sometimes you have private classes, sometimes you have classes in the masjid. You go and find the teacher. It's not always a specific, for example, classroom, school. It's not like that. Said me and this friend of mine, we had approached a certain teacher in the Hawza. And we'd asked him to teach us a certain book. He agreed. The lesson began. There's 2 of us in the lesson. One day, the teacher came to us at the beginning of the lesson and said, today is our last lesson. We said, why? We're happy with his teaching. Why? Why is the lesson cancelled? So he didn't tell us exactly why. He says, I don't have time to prepare. Every single day I need a few hours. I don't have those hours to prepare for this lesson. There's no problem. We had the final lesson. This friend of mine said something to me. Muhaqqiq Isfahani says, this friend of mine told me something. He said, the reason our teacher has cancelled the class and that he doesn't have time to prepare is because he has recently gotten married. So naturally he doesn't have time. That's why he's cancelled the class. Now Sheikh Falsafi, who narrates this, he says, I don't know how this issue of him getting married and them 2 knowing about it, how did it reach the teacher? But the teacher found out that they know the reason. So the teacher came to Muhaqqiq Isfahani and his friend and says, how do you know this? That this is no one knows about this. How did you know that? It's because of my marriage that I can't teach. So Muhaqqiq Isfahani said, yes, you're right. I didn't even ask my friend. How do you know about this? He says, look, I used to live in a small village somewhere in Iran, small town. My father was a alim. What did I say? The true izzah follows a person. When a person does something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, izzah comes and knocks on his doorstep. Allah crowns that person with the taj and the crown of izzah and honor. My father was a alim. He used to give people masail fiqhiyya. He used to lead salatul jum'ah. Someone has a nikah. A local resident alim of that place. Naturally, after some years, my father passed away. The community assumed that I was also a person of ilm like my father. Sometimes the community make a person who isn't knowledgeable into knowledgeable. They clothe an ignorant person with the cloak of knowledge. So I had nothing. I have not even basic information. They said, we used to go to your father for all of these issues. Now we go to you. He says, what did I do? What can I say? They are asking me fiqhi questions. I'm making up an answer. I have aqd of nikah to recite. I don't know what I recited. Talaq, I recited whatever I wanted. No one's asking me a question. Small town, small village. After a while, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entered into my heart. I realized, what am I doing? These people made me into an alim. I have nothing. Every mas'ala that I have said which is incorrect. How many hours do I have to answer for that on the day of Qiyamah? So one day I gathered in the masjid. I gathered the people in the masjid. I stood up. I said, my father used to teach you ahkam. My father used to lead Jumu'ah. My father used to do this and that. You place the responsibility on my shoulders. Let me tell you something. The nikahs that I have recited, get someone else to recite them again. The talaq that I have recited wasn't correct talaq. The ahkam I told you weren't correct. I have no knowledge. Don't come to me. So what did the people do? He tells Muhaqqiq Isfahani, the people began to beat me. They kicked me out of the masjid. This person taught us things that were incorrect. You were the ones in the first place that made him your alim. They kicked me out. At that moment in time, I decided that I want to go to Najaf al-Ashraf to study. And from this story, Muhaqiq Isfahani says, and Sheikh Falsafi says, that it seems that this friend of his was very simple-minded. And you'll find out why. They kicked me out of the masjid. I decided to go to Najaf, so I stayed in the town for a few days until I decided to embark on my journey to Najaf al-Ashraf. And as I am going, I met someone on the way. This person asked me, where do you go? I said, I'm going to Najaf al-Ashraf. He told me he's also going there. He says, I haven't seen someone with his type of kindness, this type of affection, this type of akhlaq. He accompanied me. And even though the journey was long, because I was in the company of this person, I didn't even realize the difficulties of that journey. Everything happened smoothly and very quickly. Until I got to Najaf and I met you, Muhaqiq Isfahani. He says, this person still comes and visits me in my dorm room, in the houza. And every so often he tells me certain things. The kindness of his face wishes for me to speak with him. So Muhaqiq Isfahani realized straight away that this is something ghaib. This isn't something normal. So this student, this friend of Al-Isfahani says, he came to me yesterday to visit me as normal. And he said to me that tomorrow your teacher is going to say that he can't teach you anymore because he's gotten married. I've told you what he told me. So Muhaqiq Isfahani realized that that person isn't a normal person. That person has the qualities of Sahibul Asri wal Zaman, Ajrillahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. He says, me and my teacher, the one who cancelled, we began asking him questions about this person. What does he look like? What are his characteristics? And exactly what he says lined up with what we had heard about the 12th Imam and those that had seen him and the characteristics that he had. This friend of ours still didn't realize what's going on. So the teacher then asked him, he says, do you mind if I can meet this friend of yours? The one that comes to you every so often? So this individual says, of course, he's so kind, he's so humble. I'll ask him tomorrow, he'll definitely say yes. He said, I went to him tomorrow, I saw him, I asked him. He mentioned a certain answer that this person told his teacher. He says, the answer that he gave me, as he said, O individual, O teacher of these two, there's no need for you to come and see me. Be like this student of yours, I shall come and see you myself. Did you understand? This student was given izzah of the people when he was in that village. When he left it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah gave him the true honor, which was what? Which was that Sahib Zaman would come and meet him regularly in the way that he comes to meet a friend. True izzah comes and sees you. He says, I don't care about my position. If I have a position in this community, people give me certain responsibilities. Would I come and one day say I'm not worthy of this? Would I come and say I've done that which is wrong? I wouldn't want to accept my mistakes. When that person put the izzah of the people on one side, that's when he gained the izzah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which I said finds the person. If these discussions have been understood, then my final question that arises is, what is the link between this concept of izzah and this verse? That belonging to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is izzah in its entirety. What is the link between this and the personality of Abu Abdullah al-Hussain salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi? And the answer is very simple. For when you look at the events that take place before Ashura and coming towards the day of the 10th of Muharram, you find this theme often is present in the sermons and the sayings of Abu Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, that it is better for me to die a death but whilst I have izzah and honor than to live with humiliation. For we find part of what took place on Ashura was Sayyid al-Shuhada showing us this true izzah that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, teaching us to live in such a way that you have honor, and better than living with humiliation is to die with honor in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I said that there are certain qualities of the izzah and honor that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you find Sayyid al-Shuhada is one of the best examples of a person who gained this honor. Why? For I said the original meaning of izzah was that a person is firm in front of a dhalim. What better example than Sayyid al-Shuhada? That no matter if it is Yazid or anyone else, mithli, someone like me, do bay'ah to him. He was a perfect example of standing in front of a dhalim no matter what the consequences. I said that izzah that comes from Allah searches you. You don't have to search for it. Have you ever thought? In Karbala, there are no cameras. There's no media. The majority of the people are those with Umar ibn Sa'ad, those sent by Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. How then was the story of Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam narrated to us in such a way that we understood that he is the master of martyrs? Because Izzah follows Abu Abdullah al-Hussain. He doesn't have to do anything. Allah makes it known who is Sayyid al-Shuhada. There is no one there. The family are there. They are made captive. The majority are those people. Yet the story reached us in its pure form today. And I said that of the qualities of the izzah that comes from Allah is that it lasts and remains. Have you seen the izzah that Allah gave to Abu Abdullah al-Hussain? That in a place like Peterborough, that a few hundred years ago, would anyone ever imagine that majalis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussain would be present here? That people would leave their houses to mourn Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salatu wassalam? The izzah of Sayyid al-Shuhada is understood on the night of the 1st of Muharram. All over the world, people come just to remember the son of Zahra alayhi salam. Izzah that came from Allah, that lasts. And I say, we are yet to see the true honor that Allah has given to Abu Abdullah. For yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored him by making something that we think is worthless, which is what? We think that the turab that is on a grave is worthless. Allah placed shifa in that turab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored him by placing the a'imma in his dhurriya, in his lineage. Allah honored him that malaika come to the place that he is remembered. Allah honored him that every single prophet of God comes to the place that Hussain is buried on the 15th of Sha'ban to do ziyarah of Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. Allah honored him that dua was answered under his dome, but we still haven't seen the completion of that honor. Why? Just before 15th of Sha'ban, in the city of Qom, I went to visit one of the Maraji with someone. When I went to visit him, just before 15th Sha'ban, so he was talking about the coming of the 15th and so on and so forth, and he was speaking about the West and the majalis that we had. And he said that he has read and studied from the scholars of Mahdawiyah, the scholars that are specialists on the topic of the 12th Imam Ajillahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. He says that when the 12th Imam comes, and when he first announces that he comes, there's a certain line that he says. And often you would hear this in the musibah, in the masa'ib. He says, Ya ahl al-alam, O people of this world, inna jaddi al-Husayn, qataluhu adshana. My grandfather Hussein, they killed him thirsty. He said, have you ever thought about this? When he first comes and he wishes to announce himself, why does he announce himself like this? There's a secret hidden here. This secret is one of the manifestations of Izzatul Hussain. When the 12th Imam comes, why does he introduce himself by saying, my grandfather was the one that they killed thirsty, and they took the clothing from his body, they took his turban, they took his aba? He says, because this is a sign that just before the dhuhur, Allah will make it such that every single person on this earth knows the name and the story of Hussain alayhi salam. Why would I introduce myself with a personality that no one knows, that no one has heard of? He says the reason that he introduces himself in this way is because at that time, just before the dhuhur, there won't be one part of the earth that hasn't heard and understood the story of Abu Abdullah. And so I introduce myself from my grandfather. I am the one whose grandfather is he who you have heard of, who was killed, thirsty and atshan. Part of the izzah of Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam also is that he is that individual for whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala arranged people to mourn for him before he even came into this world. Before he even came into this world, Allah arranged for a community and a qawm and a ummah to come and mourn for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. The narrations say in Kamil al-Ziyarat, it is mentioned when people gather to mourn for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, Allah shows every single one of their faces to Abu Abdullah. Sayyid al-Shuhada can see all of those that mourn and cry for him, and Sayyid al-Shuhada does istighfar and says, Ya Allah, forgive their sins. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives the sins of those people due to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. His mourners were arranged before he came into this world. Az-Zahra, salamullahi alayha, Allahumma salli. Comes to her father, the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, and says, Ya Abata, there's something different about this pregnancy. He says, what do you mean, Ya Zahra? He says, sometimes the child in my womb speaks to me. And when he speaks to me, he says things that are very difficult for me to bear. So the Prophet of Islam would say, and Ya Zahra, what does he say to you in the womb? So she would say, he would say, Ya Rasul Allah, hadha al-janeen يخاطبني ويقول عني العطشان. Oh my mother, I am thirsty. ويقول عني الغريب. Oh my mother, I am all alone. Zahra says, Ya Rasulullah, why does he say these things to me? Rasulullah would tell Zahra of the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah that he will be killed all alone with no one to support him. What was the first question of Fatima to Zahra? She said, will I still be alive during those moments? Rasulullah would say, no, I will have gone by that time, and you and Amirul Mu'mineen would have gone, and his brother Hussain would have left this world. What was the second question of Zahra? She would say, and when they kill my child, will anyone cry for him after his death? Rasulullah would say, Allah has placed an ummah and a nation to cry for your son Abu Abdullah. And that's why as soon as the moon of Muharram would seen the companions would say, we would look at the faces of our Imams, the face would seem changed, for it was not that the moon of Muharram was seen except for sorrow covered their households. The son of Shabib says, I came to Imam al-Ridha. Imam al-Ridha looked in a state of sorrow. I said, Ya ibn Rasulillah, why do you have grief? I said, do you not know we have entered into the month of Muharram? And he would say, Ibn al-Shabib, kunta باكيا لشيء فابكي لجدي الحسين. If you want to cry for anyone, cry for my grandfather. Why, Ya Imam al-Ridha? Why should he cry? فإنه ذبح He didn't say for he was killed. He said because he was slaughtered. كما يذبح الكبش, in the way that they would slaughter an animal. Why? Because when an animal is slaughtered, you throw its body on the ground. When they killed Abu Abdullah, his body lay on the ground. And when you kill an animal, you do not give it any water. He says, my grandfather was killed whilst he was thirsty. This morning in the lives of the Ummah would continue for Abu Abdullah al-Hussain. Di'bal al-Khuzai says, I saw Imam al-Ridha on one occasion. Imam al-Ridha asked me, have you bought anything for my grandfather? Lines of Masa'ib and poetry. Di'bal would say, Rasulullah, when would I come to you without having lines for your grandfather? Imam al-Ridha straight away he brings forward Di'bal. He places a covering for the women to sit on one side. Imam would sit on the floor and place Di'bal on the mimbar. Recite for a majlis for me, O Di'bal. Di'bal would begin to recite those words. Madarisu ayatin خلت من تلاوة ومنزل وحي مغفر العرسات ديار علي والحسين وجعفر وحمزة والسجاد ذي الثفنات قبور بكوفان وأخرى بطيبتين وأخرى بفخ لها سلواتي. He would say the houses of Ahlul Bayt are empty and one is buried in Najaf. There are those buried in Medina and those buried in Karbala. He would say there is he who is buried in Baghdad. Di'bal would recite these verses when suddenly Imam al-Ridha says, can I add a few lines to your poetry? Di'bal would say, yes, ya ibn Rasulillah. Imam al-Ridha would say, وَقَبْرٌ بِطُوز, and there is one buried in Tuz. Suddenly Di'bal says, I know of the ones in Najaf, the one in Baghdad, the one in Karbala, and those in Medina. But which of you are buried in Tuz in Khurasan? Imam al-Ridha began to mention how he would be made shaheed in Khurasan. When suddenly one of the servants comes, he says, Ya ibn Rasulillah, stop mentioning how you will be killed. Why, O individual? He says, because behind the curtain your sister was listening and hearing how you shall be killed. She has fainted. I say, O sister of Imam al-Ridha, you just heard how he would be killed. Zainab saw Shimmer sitting on the chest of Abd. على لعنة الله للقوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. يا حسين.